Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Press R. 2.3 million people in Western Central Africa alone affected by floods. 503 killed in Chad. 1.7 million affected in Chad. Cameroon, just the far north. 200,000 people suffering just because of floods. Many of them displaced, and they are living in makeshift homes. We have the phenomenon that extends to the other parts of Africa. We have the same phenomenon in Europe and other parts of the world. Our question is, in life's race, is climate change not overtaking humanity? That is what we're going to focus on. We're going to look at the present situation of what's happening on climate change. We're also going to look at the remedial measures. And if you stay with us, you also know what to do so that you are not just a victim as an individual, as an institution, with what climate change is bringing. It is bringing, some people call it doom. We have to face it. That's what we're going to do on Press R today. You stay on. I will introduce the persons who are going to be with us on this set. I'm going to start with Professor Isaac Njila, who is a catastrophologist. We are very glad to have you here. You deal more with catastrophe and the science of catastrophe. Prof, thank you for coming to Press R.
Thank you very much, Killian, for making me part of this discussion. I'm really proud to be here today. In fact, I would like you to give me just 1 minute to give a focus on the global view of these floods that we have, or this disaster that we have all over.
Yes, Prof. We're going to give you ample time to do that. This is the point for introduction. I will start with you to give us that. Okay. Now, we're going to introduce Eugene Fongwa. Eugene Fongwa is a climate policy analyst, and he is from the African Climate Justice Alliance. That is the institution for which he works. Eugene, we've missed you so much on Press R, and we are happy to have you on this program today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to come back here in an entirely different capacity. I'm so glad to be here and to discuss something that has been the center of my work in the last 5 or so years.
Thank you. Those who don't know you yet are going to discover that when you speak, listening is compelling. Thank you very much for coming once again. And we have another guest with us, another specialist in what you know, what's happening around the world this time. Dr. Kiming Ignatius is a climatologist, and he is a worker, is an expert from the National Observatory on Climate Change. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Nda. And it's the pleasure for the National Observatory, especially in moments like this when Cameroon has been hard hit, and for the CRTV team for always working together with the observatory to ensure Cameroonians have information at the expected time.
Thank you very much. Press R is about the press. This is the time we let you know what the press fed on in the week that just passed. And Emmanuela Vemny read the newspapers for us. Emmanuela.
As floods ravage Mayo-Danai division of the Far North region, disrupting life and bringing daily activities to a near halt, government moves to tackle dire humanitarian concerns in Cameroon Insider. President Paul Biya comes to the rescue of victims in Echo Outlook by according 350 million CFA francs as relief in the median. Territorial Administration Minister leads inter-ministerial fact-finding mission to the Far North, a news watch, and as the reporter reports of 350 million allocated to alleviate the situation, the Guardian Post cues in to indicate that Minister Paula Tanganji has revealed Biya's financial package has increased to 1.9 billion CFA francs. Cameroon Insider thinks a more sustainable solution to floods in the far north is possible just when the Herald Tribune reports on imminent floods and landslides in 7 regions according to Climate Change Observatory, happening at a time when new orientations in Northwest-Southwest Reconstruction Plan are made public in the media and new guidelines presented by Minister Tasson after Prime Minister reorganizes the plan in the news. In the Post newspaper, municipal update is certain reconstruction plan's new look will boost major national dialogue impact in the Southwest, and Southwest stakeholders then embrace reorganized reconstruction plan in the Guardian Post. As there are high expectations, the new look reconstruction plan aligns to major national dialogue recommendations in the horizon. The Guardian Post presents road covered so far by the Northwest Regional Assembly 4 years on. Cameroon is then set to be the pioneer African country in the transformation of bauxite in the horizon, as Minister Fou Calistus highlights historic significance of this Minim Mata project for Cameroon's development. In The Voice, Cameroonian peacekeepers are announced en route to the Central African Republic. In Cameroon Insider, The Guardian Post seeks answers to whether Biya to run unchallenged in 2025 presidentials. The Dawn quotes chiefs telling the population to anticipate Bangem Nguti Road will happen, just when The Voice, in a special tribute to its fallen editor, writes, Editor Ben Humphrey, the ultimate news story. Until I come your way again, this is your Hour with the Press.
Thank you very much, Emanuela Vemnu. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are just tuning in, this is Press Hour, and we are broadcasting live from Studio 4 of the CRTV Production Center and Balatu in Yaoundé. You followed that press review by Emanuela Vemnu, and in our tradition, we pick up a topic that is not directly our focus and we talk about. And the pressman here on the panel is Eugene Fongwa, to whom we give the honor to choose one topic that we use as a teaser.
I think you should say former pressman. I've stopped identifying as a journalist for a while now.
It's in your blood.
Yes,
Once a journalist, always a journalist.
but it's interesting to hear in the news that at least Cameroon is making attempts to exploit some of its resources, mineral resources, especially those that have been there for years. We've always talked about them. Some of us studied them in school, and we've never got to a point where these are in a very meaningful way transformed into products that can help our development and our country. And it's very related, unlike what you say, to the discussion that we're having, in the sense that there is also a conversation, a very serious conversation now around the continent about how do we use our mineral endowment to help our transition to a low-carbon economy as a way of addressing climate change. You know that most of those minerals are found in Africa, nickel, cobalt, and what have you. And Cameroon is also lucky to have such minerals. I'm sure the work that has started with bauxite could be extended and have a very meaningful conversation in the country on how do we take advantage of these minerals within the context of our efforts to address the climate crisis, especially in developing renewable energy technologies like batteries for electric vehicles, batteries for some mass consumption technologies like cell phones, but also components for wind turbines, solar panels, and all of that.
Very much so, Eugene. Thank you for raising that issue. Cameroon had occasion to speak with the management, the administrative officials of the Ministry of Mines and Mining and Technological Development, of course, and you will be amazed to know that we have up to about 300 different minerals in our subsoil, and some of them are already being exploited. The Ambalam iron ore is one big project that Cameroon is banking on, and it is already at the phase of exportation. Yes, Prof, that also is your area of specialty, the soft soil.
Thank you very much. In fact, Cameroon has one of the largest bauxite deposits in Africa. And since independence, you realize that the French made it in such a way that the mining industry was installed in Guinea because they also have bauxite, and the processing industry in Cameroon for no reason, for the reason that we don't know. We have a lot of minerals because the Minister of Mines and Technical Development embarked on a big program that is to map out the whole country to see what type of minerals we have that can be exploited. In fact, as we just said, Balam is a very large iron deposit. That is, it's not only vast, but as you go deeper and real deeper, it's going richer and richer. And when the time will come for full exploitation, because we cannot start exploiting it easily now, although the minister said that we'll do it using big trucks that can carry 100 tons of iron to the coast. The railway is still going to be built for 450 kilometers, and when it is built, it will be a very big revolution as far as mining is concerned in this country.
And then transformation of our economy, as Eugene rightly said.
A lot of employment.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, it really enrich the country as far as financial aspects are concerned.
Yes, thank you very much, Professor Isaac Njila. And Dr. Kiming Ignatius, you are a climatologist, and you know that some of these things are directly linked with climate. Yes, your take on that.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Kilian, because when you look at the mining industry in general, if things are not properly done, it will constitute one of the greatest percentage of emission to the environment. So what should be recommended should be when the time comes for exploitation proper, the first step should be environmental impact assessment studies should be carried out in all areas and all the conditions duly respected. And once extracted, usage should be tilted towards clean energy sources, okay. Yes, to avoid a situation where the exploitation of these minerals will not only lead to pollution and emission of greenhouse gases, but it will be a plus in helping to put in place a carbon-friendly atmosphere.
And raw material for green energy in Cameroon we have in abundance. I think you're going to tell me that we have a lot of potential for green energy. We just need to exploit, we just need to put that into use, into action, and then we're going to achieve what you're talking about, so that we do not exploit, get one thing right and get the other one wrong. Thank you.
Yes, just to quickly say that there are a few other things we need to take into account, which is local value addition of these minerals. If you do an analysis of the mining industry, not only in Cameroon, but across the continent, you find that the value of this mineral wealth is hardly felt locally. One, because of the governance of these resources. It's usually controlled by a handful of people. It's a very opaque, intransparent, and sometimes very corrupt system. So we have an opportunity as a country to correct the errors that other countries have made, so that we don't find ourselves in the situations of countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, or even South Africa, where in spite of the contribution of the mineral wealth to the economy of the country, there's a lot of human rights issues. There are a lot of people in the communities who are dying because of intoxication from the mining sites and all of those things. But if we do not get to a point where our economies that really transform across all parameters, whether it's in terms of GDP, but also in terms of enhancing the living conditions of people, then we would have failed.
Yeah, thank you.
We cannot continue to extract just for the purpose of export.
Thank you very much. It has to have an impact on our lives, on our economy. Thank you very much. And our focus today is on climate. We've had floods all over the place. Right now, the Minister of Territorial Administration, Paul Atanganji is leading a big government delegation, including other ministers and some other expert organizations to address the situation in the far north that has displaced so many thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And those floods are not limited to the far north. They are also experienced in some other parts of the country. It has been a phenomenon that is recurrent. We know about the Boya last year. We know about so many other places in the West and all over the place. So we're going to see what actually is responsible for this phenomenon that is gaining ground and threatening human existence. That's why we've coined our topic for today, Life's Race is Climate Change Overtaking Humanity. Now, tell us, how do you explain what is happening now? Professor Isaac Njila.
Yeah, Killian, it appears the planet Earth has a fever. When you have a fever, temperatures rise and you start sweating. Globally, the planet Earth is undergoing global warming. And this global warming is causing the ice at the poles to be melting, increasing volume of water in our oceans. The temperatures at the tropical regions, at parts of the world, are also rising, which means that as the amount of water is increasing in the sea, you realize a lot of floods along the coastal areas like Limbe, Kribi, Idinao, and so on in Cameroon. It's not only that, because you have this amount of water in the sea and also the fact that you have the temperatures are rising, there's much evaporation of the water, the water. This is in addition to the water vapor that is coming from the evapotranspiration from our forest. It creates a mass of water vapor in the atmosphere, which of course has to condense. When it does, or when it precipitates in a particular area, the abundance of water will tend to cause floods in one way or the other. For example, you have an area we're talking about, Yagua, that was severely hit by floods last week. You see, the source or the sources of the water that constituted these floods in Jaguar are from the Mandara Mountains, from Bere, and from Chad. And when the water comes and congregates into one channel entering into Jaguar, Jaguar has particular characteristics. For example, the soils there are clays, and these clays do not allow water. That is clays that just absorb water and then stay. They do not allow water to percolate, because when rain falls, there must be a percentage that percolates into the ground. Mm. That one is completely absent; it is blocked. Jaguar itself is flat. There is no the topography is just flat, so that when water comes, they just it doesn't really
it does not run down.
It doesn't run down through a channel. Mm. You don't have hills that will channel the water, so Jaguar is doomed to fall into that situation. Secondly, you have
before you get to that, we have had Jaguar before, and we have had the Gividik incident, the Lake Maga incident, the River Logon incidents, severally. But the phenomenon now is described as never seen. What accounts for this? You just talk about the heat and the rise in water level. What makes it peculiar this time?
Yeah, in fact, many people are talking about climate change. But for me, I think it is not climate change as such, it's climate variability. Which means that in the past, when we were in primary and secondary school, in Du, you could say that the rains will start on the 15th of March and end on the 15th of November. Mm-hmm. But now you cannot predict. You see, it is not only that. You don't know that the abundance of water in the atmosphere as a result of this global warming is something that should be taken into big consideration.
Now, so you had some other points to talk about why these floods this time, yes?
Yes, but when we cannot manage our water as well, the floods will come. For example, we have Lake Maga, which is a man-made lake constructed on a dam of 27 kilometers, and just a small dike of 7 kilometers that will not protect water from leaving the river lagoon into Lake Maga. Yes, and the dam itself is very shallow. Maybe I should give you the difference between a dam and a dike. A dam is any embankment that you put to block water from flowing in the channel, and a dike is an embankment that you put to prevent water from flowing out of its water channel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're talking now about the dam, the Lake Maga you're talking about, yes, which you and I know have been to that area. We actually have a blockage concreted along the Gividik side of Lake Maga. Yeah. Yes. Don't you think that is...
yeah, so you see, when the river flows naturally, it develops a river, a floodplain, so that when there's excess precipitation, water leaves the channel and enters and becomes stored in the floodplain. But when you come and build a dike along it, you prevent water from going to the floodplain on that side. And all the water that's flowing into the stream now, or rainfall, will be going to the other side. That is the main thing that is happening up there.
Okay, Eugene, you have more on why these floods this time. We've just chosen floods, but we also know that we have fires around the world. Just this time you have other areas where villages are being engulfed by fire because of heat. We've just taken floods because that's what we are witnessing in Cameroon and in some parts of Africa this time. So what is at the base of what is happening, this phenomenon?
Okay, I think the basic science Prof has explained in that when the temperature of the planet is warming, one of the things that does is that it triggers changes in other climatic parameters, including precipitation, which means that in places where traditionally you have a lot of rainfall, you're going to see a lot more rainfall. So what's really happening in this context is that normal phenomena are being pushed to extremes. So you have an increased frequency of rainfall, but not only that, when it rains, you have a larger amount of water coming down into the territory you're dealing with. So we have a combination of more rain falling than usual. And that's one of the reasons why you're having all of these dams and water retention facilities being overflooded, because it's receiving more water than they were built to receive. So it could be a combination of those climatic and weather phenomena, but also a factor of the infrastructure, which is now inadequate to deal with the amount of water that is coming into those lakes and water retention facilities. And that you see across the world, wherever there are extreme weather events, as we call them, you find that if infrastructure is not updated, the amount of damage is also higher.
Yes, because that's what we're witnessing.
Because most of the time you build an infrastructure to deal with a phenomenon based on the measurements you had at that time. What climate change does is that it pushes all of those parameters to new extremes. And in this case, we are talking about an extreme of excess of rainfall precipitation. But some places, the extreme is in the opposite direction, that you're having longer periods of drought, which is leading to famines and failed crops and failures of livestock production and all of that. So you need to think about the climate change impacts on precipitation in those two extremes. You have excess of rainfall or precipitation, generally speaking, and sometimes very little of it. But the problem here is that climate change is now pushing those things to new extremes.
Thank you very much. We are going to go into predictions. These things are actually predicted. We have science. Science tells us what will happen in 1 hour, at the end of the day, in 1 week, in 1 month, in 1 year, in 10 years, in 50 years. That is very possible. Science predicts all of this. Now, I'm going to get to the climatologist, Dr. Keming Ignatius. You may have a comment on what Professor Njila, Isaac, and Eugene Fongwa have talked about, but we want you to open a new chapter of predictions. What are the predictions we have with the phenomenon that we have now. We should say phenomena of climate because, as he says, there are very, very different aspects of it. Either it's heat, either it's extreme floods and the rest that produces fire or water.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kilian. Just to add a comment on what Prof. and Mr. Eugene said, we are talking here of a phenomenon that is considered to be man-induced. Climate change at this level is considered to be triggered principally by the emission of greenhouse gases. What are these greenhouse gases? You know, the Earth is not warm by this radiation that comes directly. What creates the temperature around us is the heat that is leaving the surface and rising. So when these greenhouse gases that are sent out to the atmosphere, be it carbon dioxide, methane, and the rest, when they accumulate, they block the outgoing heat from escaping. Because the one that comes, the sizes are smaller, and when going back, there is a conversion process. We don't need to go into it. That goes back. It already has a bigger wavelength. This retains now the heat that is creating generally warmer than normal situation globally. Prof talked about climate variability. Yes, climate change is global and variability is local. What is happening now is that the normal climatic parameters have changed their behavior. Yes, that is the manifestation. We have, as Mr. Eugene said, that rains, we are receiving higher amounts of rainfall. But you will notice that there are other areas that are crying, while others are receiving higher amount, others are witnessing drought and dry spell. So the main elements, or main aspect through which this is manifested is the distribution over space and time. When you look at last year, we received rainfall in Cameroon almost up to the month of December.
Yes, that's
in the month of July, the Western Highland went for about 1 to 2 weeks without rains. At the same time, in in Southeast Asia, the typhoons that have been registered this year have been noted to be one of the greatest magnitude in recent time. When you go to Dubai in April, you notice that within a single day, April 16, they receive rainfall equivalent to annual rainfall. The same goes to Chad. What is happening in North Cameroon cuts across the Sahel region. You will bear with me, Niger, for instance, has postponed the reopening date from 2nd to 28th October because of floods. The same in northern Nigeria, in Maiduguri. You will notice this year there is a phenomenon generally referred as the ENSO, El Nino Southern Oscillation, which has a warming and a colder phase. This year, both phases occurred at the same time, and the World Meteorological Organization warned that as from August, this situation was going to be more intensified.
Thank you very much. Talking about, okay, you want to continue? Yeah, since we've talked about warning, we want to enter that phase of predictions, beginning with you.
Yes, exactly. And at the level of the National Observatory, when we had this news, we did our own analysis. And when you look at the seasonal bulletin for the month of September to October, we indicated clearly the same as for that of June, that the zone, the Sudan-Sahelian zone, the north and the extreme north, is going to receive accumulated high amounts of rainfall within shorter periods. This is because when we have this situation of La Nina.
What is that, La Nina?
Yeah, it's the colder phase of the ENSO phenomenon, El Nino Southern Oscillation. It's a phenomenon that occurs within the Pacific that coordinates, that oriented the behavior of wind. They move in the south, in the
different ends?
Yes, horizontal direction, instead of the normal circulation within the pressure belt that is from north-south.
Okay.
And when it usually happens, rains are received more higher in the northern parts of of Africa in the Sahara region, and there is a zone of low pressure bed, generally known as the intertropical convection, where the winds that bring rain and dry season usually meet. When this phenomenon happens, this zone usually goes a little bit up north than usual. That is why you see that this year is not only Cameroon that has been hit. You see Chad, the northern part of Cameroon, northern part of Niger. As from early November, this or from mid-October, this zone will start shifting downward, and that is initially we'll start witnessing the progressive approach of the dry season.
Okay, now bring it down to Cameroon in terms of our regions. How are we going to see that manifest in the different regions of Cameroon? Thank you, you took it from a more global. Yes, let us see who and where in Cameroon should be careful.
Okay, at the level of Cameroon, let me begin from the extreme north, where we already have a precarious situation. Though rainfall will generally reduce in terms of quantity in the next 10 days, and as from the first week of October, around the 10th, they will start observing the beginning of the dry season in that area. But the little rains that will be registered in this area can likely still lead to flooding, given the fact that the soils have been supercharged, the river beds have been filled, and at this moment, it's not the quantity that will really matter. So floods are still imminent in that area in the next 10 days. You come down to...
Yes, before you come down, let me give this as a testimony. The first time I went to the far north to stay, because I worked in the far north for 3 years, I went there in October. And from October to May, I didn't see a drop of rain. October to May, that's about... 8 months. Yeah, 8 months of complete sunshine, dry season. Yes, coming further down.
Yes, exactly. You know, this is already an ecologically fragile zone. Contrary to us down south that we have been blessed to have a long rainy season, these guys up north, they have 4.5 months of rainy season and the rest is dry. Rainy season begins there generally around June, and you will notice this year with climate change, the month of June was relatively dry. The Mayo Danai that has been hit by floods, the rains effectively began there almost around mid-July. Coming back to where I was, you come down to the north, you see that the Benue region still has high risk of flooding. Again, with the Mayo Ray in areas like Choleri, Reboba, and Toboro, it's still very possible to have floods there. Down in the Adamawa, the Ngaoundere town, the regional headquarters itself, still have the chances of registering floods. We come down to the littoral. All the 5 council areas of the littoral need to take precautions, especially areas like Lokpom, Bunaberi around Mabanda, Ndokpazi area, Denver, southern part of Bunaberi, and the various Mabanda areas. The same for Yaoundé, because you notice we receive relatively less rains this year in Yaoundé as per the tradition. October has a high risk of registering isolated accumulation of rainfall in a given number of days, leading to flash floods. And zones like the Avenue Kennedy, Mvok Ada, around Corneille, Omnisport, Colbison, they need to take special precaution right up to the end of November. You go to the southwest, Limbe remains the same. Boya is still very possible to register flash flood. In the northwest, in Ngokitunja division, Babisi, Babungo, Bamunka is still very possible. In the Menua, the southern part around Sancho, in the Onkam areas around Kekem, and in the eastern part of the southwest region, in the Mbonge area, especially around the locality known as Nganjo and Bamuso in the Bakassi Peninsula, are possible areas that will register some of these.
You have that offhand. We would like that expertise knowledge of yours. You're not reading from anywhere. That's what makes you a climatologist and the National Observatory on Climate Change Observatory in Cameroon. We mean that off the cuff, you can give us all those details. I think let us follow exactly what has been happening in the far north. When we come down, we'll continue with what's happening. One of our correspondents in the far north region followed what has been happening in Yagwa, and we're going to get a taste of it. Yes, what I see is instead some images from Boya. Well, from Boya last year. Yes, here it looks like that's the far north. If we have that report, please give us.
Gwa subdivision, Mayodanai division, is one of the many localities affected by the torrential rains. The population who woke up to find their homes and surroundings flooded have been devising new ways to survive from the unfortunate incident as serious material damages have been recorded. Since there is no exit, water is at the same level. It is impossible to move around. We are submerged by water. Survived animals and table beds are looking for shelter, or at least what is left of it. Some houses have been destroyed by water. Kitchen utensils are not spared. The effects of the rains in Yagwa are beyond what the tongue can tell. We were surprised by the rains during the early hours. We have lost household utensils, table beds, and domestic animals. Local administrative and municipal authorities advise the population to relocate before the worst happens. For many, where will they go to? Some 3 persons have been reported dead due to the floods in Yagwa. The suffering population, some who don't know where to turn to, have their hope built on nothing less but on survival.
Much Amos Eno Nyaket from the CRTV Far North. What actually has amazed me in the details, the off-the-cuff details of Dr. Kiming Ignatius, is with all this information, what do you do with this? Why does it occur, given that you know this? What are the measures?
Okay, you're talking to me.
Oh, I thought he could start and then you. You know, you've given us precise information on this place, that place, giving the names of villages where people should be careful. When you have this, you've always had this. What do you do?
Exactly, although we limited only at the level of floods, but I should also be good to mention the high risk of landslides, given the supersaturated level of soils in elevated areas, especially in the northwest, part of southwest and the west region in the last part of the rainy season. When this information is available, the first thing that the National Observatory do is to make sure it's at the disposal of the Civil Protection Agency in the Ministry of Territorial Administration. It's true we have seen once in a while, like for example, the SDU of Owuri, the governor of the West region, sent out communiques cautioning the population, warning the population to take some measures. But we would like to plead that other measures should be taken and the population should gain consciousness. Like in the West, when people get up in the morning, the first thing is to check on weather news before they step out. Let's try to develop that culture.
The media. That culture, yes.
Before I end, the media should also help the observatory. Why not create a channel just for weather, climate risk, and the associated measures that can be taken.
Well,
If we
whatever
can
they
do
say
that
on
for
CRTV, you know, before the news, you have cues of that on CRTV. You are also here at this point, and you are giving out the information. Thank you very much. You know, CRTV is doing so much for this. The media is working, but we admit that we have to do more. Yes, Eugene.
Yes. So what he's been describing is what we refer to as early warning. So we could say for sure that to some extent we have some kind of early warning in Cameroon, because local administrators, populations can know up to 3 months in advance what kind of climatic and weather-related risk they face. What is lacking is the disaster risk management response, because we don't have them. We have, of course, we have an agency that's in charge of civil protection, but there clearly isn't a disaster risk management. A good example of a disaster risk management would be in a situation of a flood, will be that at a very local level, where you know there is a high probability of flood, you have a system in place that tells people if the warning comes and there's a certain threshold. Let's say, for example, if it's a river that's flowing through a community, if the water gets to a certain level, there is a certain number of things that the community does.
Yeah.
There's a response in the community. So at one point they can tell you, don't be worried, even if it's raining, so far we're safe. It gets to a certain level that tell the populations, start packing. The health services start preparing to receive victims. The transport infrastructure is strengthened for evacuation. There are certain things that begin to happen within the community to prepare for the worst. It gets to a certain level, they say, now we have to evacuate. But by the time you get to where people need to evacuate, you have to have all of these things ready. You cannot be taking decisions during a disaster. All of this has to be in place well in advance. People need to know when to swing in. So if you are the police and the gendarmerie that needs to provide protection and evacuation of communities, fire brigade, you know well in advance what to do, how to do it. You have the equipment, you have the resources to do it.
Very good. You know, I like to listen to my guests speak, like just the way I've done with you. Is you sending the blame to those
No.
But why don't you think that in Cameroon, particularly where we are, people have been sensitized, people have been told that this place where you are, you're not supposed to be there, and it is not the people who tell them. It is they who refuse.
No. There is something you're missing.
Tell me.
Sensitization.
Yes.
It's not enough. I'm going to take an example of the traffic light. It doesn't matter how much people are educated that when it's red, you stop. If you don't have measures in place to make them stop,
yes,
the tendency is that they will come and try to pass. So you need to put a camera, you need to put a policeman, you need to put in place fines, you need to find a way to enforce. So if you count on the good sense of people, you're going to always find yourself in this situation.
Consider. You've explained it so well. So can we move forward? So no, so we lack that culture of sanctioning. We allow certain things to get out of hand, and then we start coming in.
Because those same places where people are building, there are ordinances, or I don't know what, prefectural orders, or I don't know what, that stop them from settling there. Why are those regulations and ordinances not enforced? That's where the problem is. There's a failure of the enforcement of the regulation, and human behavior is not something you leave in. Even God has to associate sanctions,
God has
with
sanctions.
sin,
Yes,
to be able to hold. If you don't do that, people are not on their own going to willingly behave well.
I repeat that you've explained it so well. We know that we have a problem of implementation of our laws. That also is a problem. So we cannot belabor that point. Yes, Professor Isaac Njila, how do we deal, apart from what Eugene is saying, how do we deal practically from a scientific point of view? You are a catastrophologist. How can such, because these are catastrophes, natural catastrophes, how can we deal with these things now?
As Eugene said, I'd just like to continue from there. Each community is supposed to have a disaster prevention and management committee whose members are appointed or selected from the councils or from government institutions. These these members have to be trained on disaster management depending on the type of disasters that they have. Like in Jaguar, they should concentrate on floods. Then when they're trained, they should be given tools with which to use in order to manage these disasters. If information comes from a climate change observatory, that information should go straight to the community radio so that it can be announced after every 10 minutes in the local languages and so on, right? That is part of what part of the story. Then it's not only that. This committee, having this equipment, has to undergo a series of simulation exercises. Sometimes I worked on Lake Maga and Lake Lagdo, and we realized that Lagdo was giving signs of, breaking. Just to say that I'm not a prophet of doom, as you said earlier.
You are not.
Yes,
I have been following. I have not. I've been following. I have been following this critically. What is happening around the world, and there is fear reported on BBC and on some African radio and TV stations that there is an accumulating problem with Lake Maga because once it happens in Lake Maga, like Eugene and Ignatius were talking about, Maga will overflow into the Adamawa region of Nigeria, and that could be very deadly. So,
and realize that if Lagdo, the dam were to break.
Yes, we were talking about Lagdo. I was actually talking about Lagdo, not Maga. Thank you very much.
I mean, Garwa will be 50 meters below water. So we gave instructions that, look, you asked us to propose something. Now you have way up the mountains where you usually pray. You should do it in such a way that after every 2 years, you do some simulation exercise. The lake is already broken and water is coming down, and see how people can move to that place without being hit by the floods. And also that we should put, signals along the river from Lagdo itself right into Nigeria, so that as soon as it breaks, the alarm will just trigger and it goes right in Nigeria. But till now, nobody is doing anything. That is the problem. And that is the part of the government was supposed to be done, because the population in Garwa is not a small population. Then we've gone down to Kribi and seen that very soon Kribi will get away from the rest of Cameroon around the Lycée because of sea incursion from global warming, from sea level rise. And nobody
that is serious.
The council is doing. It's doing something, but that is too little. It needs a Marshall Plan for water to be blocked from the ocean into the land. So most of those things are there, but we need to protect our the areas. You see, you talked about Douala. Somebody talked about Douala there. Why we usually have floods there? The floods there are not caused by nature; they are caused by man. When you build a house, you automatically block an area where water was supposed to be percolating. When you pave, you block that area. So all the water that's supposed to be percolating now starts moving as surface water. When we were in primary school, I'm not saying that I was in primary school in 1954. When the Bonaberi Bridge was built, it was in 1954. It was,
there was no plan of conception of you.
1.8 kilometers in length. But we came after some time and reclaimed where Dangote has his cement factory, and reclaimed the area where you have the SCG pay for petrol and so on, getting about 800 meters from the normal channel. So when water comes from the Yabasi area, from the western region and so on, to get to that small hole, it gets blocked and bounces back into land. So that's the main problem that we have in Douala. Okay. And the channels, most of the channels are not even the sizes that what the rivers permitted were created. Yes,
Prof, this is our topic for today. Life's race. Life actually is a race. That's what we think on Press. Is climate change overtaking humanity? From what all of you are explaining, that's where we are now. Overtaking means that we are in danger.
We must have to combat climate change very seriously because we have allowed it to go too far. We need to fight it and fight very seriously by changing our behavioral patterns. If we continue emitting the greenhouse gases, we are really doomed for it.
How do we not continue? What can we do given that our means only allow us to emit those gases?
It doesn't. How much do we emit in Cameroon? It's other countries that do that, and we pay the consequences. The amount of the gases that are being emitted in America, the amount of gas that's emitted, cannot be compared to that in Cameroon. So that's when we have to go into carbon trade, which maybe Mr. Eugene can explain a bit far better.
He will actually explain because I have received Dr. Anjamsi here, who has explained the phenomenon very clearly that in the world, why we have preserved us, the other people have exhausted theirs, yes. And they have to pay us for keeping their environment, because it is thanks to us that some of those countries that have exhausted theirs. Yes, Eugene, I think I'm not out of the...
No, you're not.
Yeah.
I think that's the climate justice bait, because what we've been discussing so far is perhaps the science and the policy. And the developmental frames of the climate crisis, but there's also a justice frame, as you say, which is that climate change doesn't only come with these consequences that we've described, but it places certain burdens of action on communities. So we need to do things. For example, we need to build more robust infrastructure if we want to adapt to say, the floods. We need to build a dike, strengthen the dikes and the dams that we have in the far north. And if we can agree that we have these extreme weather events as a result of climate change, and we know that climate change is the result of how we consume our fossil fuels, and we know that there are certain parts of the world that have produced and consumed more fossil fuels and therefore put more emissions into the atmosphere than others, we can hold them responsible for climate change, at least global warming. And the climate justice argument says that you cannot ask people who have not been part of a problem to not just be part of the solution, but to be additionally burdened to solve the problem. That is, Cameroon, for example, taking resources that they should have been putting in education and healthcare to address issues of climate change. So that's where the climate justice argument is. But even then, when it comes with disasters, our governments still have to deal with it. And I think one of the things that we can do, and getting back to your original question, is that we now need to change completely how we do development planning. I'll take urban planning, for example. If you had, Prof said the problem of the disaster, a disaster only occurs once there's damage and there's loss of life. The phenomenon in itself is not the disaster. The disaster is the poor management of the flood and the damage that it causes. And usually that is human. And in our case, in most of our cases, poor planning. You cannot evacuate people out of Douala very quickly.
No, it's difficult.
I'm not sure even... Do you know why many cities have very large parks? You go into a city and you have about the size of 3 football fields and it's not occupied. It's not because people lack money to build houses. Those places are usually kept when there's no problem for leisure, when there's a problem for evacuation.
Like we have now in the far north, where people have been located in some areas. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I don't know whether... But if you take a city like Yaoundé, for example, we have open spaces, which is a good thing. And then there are fences around them. And then you begin to wonder if there was a reason for people to move away from built environment into an open space. There is a physical barrier that stops them from doing that.
Thank you. Thank you. We are going to move gradually out of our discussion because we have less than 5 minutes to go to the end of press hour for today. Let us, before I give you room to give your way forward, your last words, let us look at what government does when it happens, when people are stubborn to move, when the nature hits, government does something. Right now, as we speak, The Minister of Territorial Administration is leading a delegation, interministerial, intersector delegation to the far north to alleviate the suffering of Cameroonians who have been affected. Ebenezer Akanga is following the minister, and this is the report.
Urudabang, located some 5 kilometers from Yagua town, is the biggest resettlement site of flood victims out of the 3 that exist in Mayo-Danai division. It is on this site that a presidential emergency relief aid was distributed to victims of the floods which hit the Mayo-Danai divisional chief town. The relief aid consists of food and non-food items like mattresses, soap, rice, vegetable oil, buckets and mats. According to the Minister of Territorial Administration, 3,700 persons from 450 families on the site have benefited from the largesse of the presidential couple.
The most important message from the head of state is that we should, as from now henceforth, anticipate on the floods, which is something which is inevitable. The head of state has instructed that we should take preventive measures, and if you can see that things are being managed properly, it's because we had anticipated on this danger.
Elected representatives of Mayo-Danai thanked the head of state for always coming to their assistance each time they are in difficulties. They pledge their continuous support to the president while pleading that the problem of floods in the division be resolved once and for all with the construction of the dike route promised by the head of state in 2012.
The population of the Mayo-Danai division, all the parliamentarians, the mayors, and all elites will thank the head of state.
The Minister of Territorial Administration took several hours to personally supervise the distribution exercise. The amount disbursed by the head of state for the emergency relief aid is 1.9 billion CFA francs. 3 councils in the division, which are hardest hit by the floods, will receive 500 million CFA francs each.
Thank you very much, Ebenezer Akanga, trailing the Minister of Territorial Administration, who was taking the assistance of the head of state and the First Lady to the people who have been affected. And we are going to move out of this program. Your way forward, your last word, Dr. Kiming Inashus.
Yes, given the current manifestation of the negative scenarios brought by climate change, there is high needs for resilient infrastructure, and this can only come through effective climate modeling.
Thank you.
Good policies.
Thank you very much. Yes, Eugene.
Also, because from what we've seen, we need a little more coordination in terms of who does what when these things happen. Right now, climate change as an issue is kept at the Ministry of Environment, Nature Protection and Sustainable Development, but you can see that it's a problem for the Minister of Economy, it's a problem for the Minister of Agriculture, for the Minister of Energy, for almost every sector you can imagine. So perhaps we need to start thinking in Cameroon on how we take climate change outside its environmental box and make it into more of a developmental and survival issue.
Thank you. Yes, Professor Isaac.
Yeah, we need disaster preparedness, prevention, and management policies.
Thank you very much. That was Professor Isaac Njila, a catastrophologist. Thank you very much for coming. Eugene Fongwa is a climate policy analyst from Pan-African Climate Justice Alliance. Dr. Kiming Inashus, who is a climatologist, is from the National Observatory on Climate Change. And we want to thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching. If there's something you miss out on in this program today, on Monday at 2:30 p.m., you will have a rebroadcast of this program on CRTV Premium. And on Wednesday, after the news in French, you can watch this program on CRTV News. Thank you very much for watching.